What's up everyone, this is Ishan Kadaru aka Push for Life, and today we're going to be looking at 10 practical ideas that will take your Ableton push skills to the next level. They include things like deep practice, the difference between hard and soft skills, and Paretos Law, just to name a few of them. But before we continue, let's consider what we're trying to get to the next level of. Give that a little thought, because this question really gets to the heart of the issues I'm going to try to address in this video. Before we get started, let me first give you a little more context. I am an Ableton Push user. However, this is a very narrow view of what I really am. Let's take it one step further. I may be an Ableton Push user, but on a higher level I am a musician who has chosen Ableton Push as my main tool. And if we take it even a little further up the ladder, I am an artist who has chosen sound as my main medium and Ableton Push as my paintbrush, so to speak. We can even take it one step further and see that at the end of the day, I am just a human being who has a strong desire to not only express myself through sound, but also to share these sonic expressions with other people. And if you're watching this video, I guess you have a similar desire to express your ideas and emotions and share them with other people too. So the next time you sit down at your Ableton Push, don't sit down there as someone who is just messing around with their new controller. Become aware of the fact that you are a human being who is expressing themselves, and Ableton Live and Push are your tools, your state-of-the-art instrument. Which brings me to the first of the 10 practical ideas to take your push skills to the next level: knowing the power that lies at your fingertips. When one of your ancestors wanted to create a specific sound a few thousand years ago, she had to spend hours, if not days, coming up with various ways to create it. Essentially, she had to build an instrument herself that most likely could only make a very limited type of sound, cracking two rocks together, for example. Flash forward to now, where you have tools within Ableton that will let you create almost any sound you like with the necessary know-how. But we don't have to go back thousands of years to appreciate how technologically lucky we are right now. Just 60 years ago, this IBM 350 disk storage unit was what was needed to store 5 megabytes of information, and it cost $3,200 to lease per month. To put that into perspective, that's like paying $3,000 a month to store one MP3 offline. Here's another example. Back in 1953, Les Paul invented the first multi-track recording machine, which was later commercialized by Ampex, the so-called Ampex Cell Sync, and it would have set you back $10,000 back then. That's the equivalent of a staggering $90,000 in 2016. Keep in mind that this is without any of the instruments, microphones, cables, and studio space you would have needed to make use of this thing. And last but not least, if you wanted to get into sampling back in the early 80s, you could fork out up to $200,000 for a synclavier, and if you wanted specific sound libraries, they would set you back another $10,000 each. So unless you came from an extremely rich family, the likelihood of producing music in your own personal home studio was close to zero. Now let's again consider some of the possibilities you have with Ableton Suite and Push. The difference is truly mind-boggling if you sit down and think about it. Depending on your computer setup, you have an unlimited amount of both audio and MIDI tracks at your disposal, a powerful inbuilt sampler, all kinds of amazing synthesizers and audio warping, just to name a few of the technologies available out of the box. You could literally create an entire album from scratch nowadays with a laptop running Ableton Live Suite and an Ableton Push. What do you think artists like Mozart, Miles Davis, or even Jimi Hendrix would have been capable of doing with the power of the Ableton soft and hardware at their disposal? I'm sure it would have been nothing short of mind-blowing. If you are lucky enough to own Live Suite and Push, realize that you are at the cutting edge of technology and one of the few human beings on the planet right now with access to such a powerful means of creative expression. But beware, as technologies grow exponentially, it is easy to become somewhat entitled and take the unlimited possibilities we have come to enjoy for granted. So if you find yourself unhappy with what you have, make sure to think back over the last few decades and reconsider the real power that you have at your fingertips. One of the most amazing instruments ever invented, which brings me to the next idea. Ableton Push is not a controller, it is an instrument. Don't be fooled, Ableton Push is no mere controller. Controllers are machines that let you assign certain parameters of your software to different knobs, buttons, and sliders, so you don't have to use your mouse to do everything. To call Ableton Push a controller is like calling the keys of a piano controllers. It is just too narrow of a view that will limit what you will end up doing with this amazing piece of technology. The more you get into your Ableton Push, the more you will become aware of the thousands of hours of thought, design, and effort put forward by the wizards at Ableton that truly makes Push worthy of the title instrument. And by instrument, I mean a tool that enables you to express your ideas and creativity with the least amount of resistance possible. And boy, did they do an amazing job on this one. Now, to become good at any instrument, you really need to put in the time to refine your skills, which brings us to idea number 3. Understand the difference between hard and soft skills. There are 2 types of skills when it comes to learning an instrument: hard skills and soft skills. Hard skills are the craft of what it is you are learning and are all about being precise and consistent. As with any craft, there are certain fundamentals that you will need to understand and master. Stuff like keyboard shortcuts, arrangement and session view, how clips work, and so on. And it is the mastery of these fundamental hard skills that really separates the amateurs from the pros. So as an Ableton Push user, you really want to have the best grasp possible on both the software and the hardware. The best way to do this is to read the manual a couple of times until the basic concepts, terminology, and various parts that make up the entire Ableton ecosystem become second nature to you. It really is a lot like learning a new language, and the manual could be seen as your dictionary. I know this may not seem like the most fun task for a lot of you, but no one ever said learning an instrument was always easy and fun. And let's be honest, nothing worthwhile is ever always easy and fun, but the hard work always pays off in the end. And then there are the soft skills. Soft skills are all about intuition, recognizing patterns in what you're dealing with, and reacting appropriately. So think in terms of the creative things that you do, like coming up with a great beat for a track or composing a catchy hook for a song. When you start out, it is imperative that you develop your basic hard skills first, meaning that you have a good basic understanding of how both the Ableton software and hardware work before moving on to the soft creative skills like programming beats and composing. Otherwise, you may quickly become frustrated, thinking you are no good at it, and end up giving up before you even get started. And on a side note, your confidence will increase proportionally to the skills that you build, both hard and soft. So the more you practice, the more confident you will become. Push offers a wide range of possibilities though, and there are quite a few areas where you will need to build up your skills, which leads us to idea number 4. Study the basic concepts of music production. There are 7 areas where you should look to have at least a good basic hard and soft skill set if you are looking to eventually become an Ableton Push master. Number 1 is rhythm, number 2 is melody, number 3 is harmony, number 4 is sound design, number 5 is arrangement, number 6 is sound engineering, and number 7 is production. Each of these areas has both hard and soft skills to learn. What makes Ableton Push so innovative is that it integrates all of these areas into one instrument. The trick is not to focus on becoming a specialist in just one of these areas, but to become a generalist in all of them. Of course, you might be better at one area above all others, but the point is not to make that one area your sole focus. That is what will really set you apart from the masses. Of course, learning everything there is to know in all of these areas would most likely take more than one lifetime, but there is a great hack to this, which brings me to idea number 5. Integrate Paretos Law into everything you do. Paretos Law, also known as the 80-20 rule, can be applied to almost everything. When it comes to something like Ableton, it basically states that on average, 80% of the value of the software and hardware lies in 20% of its features. So you want to find the 20% of the features specific to you that will allow you to express 80% of your creative ideas, and then really master those 20% of the features above all else. You can also apply Paretos Law to studying the basic areas mentioned in the previous idea. For instance, learning the top 20% of rhythmic basics that will enable you to create 80% of the beats out there in popular music, for instance. And the same can be applied to melody, harmony, sound design, and so on. Once you know what it is you want to focus on thanks to Paretos Law, it is all about practice, which brings me to idea number 6. Deep practice makes perfect. There is practice and then there is deep practice. When I teach my students drums and music production, this is one of the ideas they underestimate most. They equate practice with sitting down and going through the motions of things they are already good at, and then they wonder why they reach a plateau where they don't seem to improve anymore. That's because they are not engaged in deep practice. And deep practice is when you work on the things that you are not good at yet. The idea is to find that boundary where you can just about do what you are working on and then reaching past it until it almost falls apart and then dialing it back again. Repeat this over and over until the boundary dissolves. Keep in mind that it is all about repetition. Repetition is key in order for your skills to not only become better, but for them to move from conscious to subconscious action. When you engage in deep practice, you will most likely find yourself being in the zone, which brings me to idea number 7, utilizing flow triggers. Flow states are what creative people often refer to when they talk about being in the zone. It is defined as an optimal state of consciousness where we feel and perform our best. Basically, you become so absorbed in the task at hand that time seems to stand still and everything you do almost becomes effortless. Unfortunately, you can't just push a button and enter into flow, but there are 17 triggers we know of to date that help induce flow. They include focused attention, clear goals, immediate feedback, a rich environment, and risk, to name just a few of them. Most of these triggers can be applied to everything you do within Ableton Live and Push. The software and hardware itself can be a catalyst to flow if used correctly. The clarity of the user interfaces helps focus attention, and both the soft and hardware are a rich environment that is novel, unpredictable, and complex, and also provides immediate feedback, all of which assist you in entering into flow states. I can only scratch the surface of this topic here, but to dive deep into this topic, a good starting point is Stephen Kotler's work over at the Flow Genome Project. As mentioned before, focused attention helps induce flow, but we live in times of utter distraction not only because of the internet and smartphones, but also because of the ever-increasing supply of new equipment and software to play with, which brings me to idea number 8. Use limitations to fuel your creativity. One of the big misconceptions about creativity is that the more tools you have, the more creative you will be. Oftentimes it's quite the opposite. When I was a part of Blue Man Group, I had the opportunity to work with one of the great Blue Man captains, a guy by the name of Jonathan Taylor. By that time, Jonathan had already performed thousands of Blue Man Group shows that follow the same basic format, and I remember asking him how he managed to not get bored. His answer was a game changer for me. He explained how it was precisely the rigid structure of the show, going from A to B to C all the way to Z, that gave him a set of boundaries within which he could be creative and move freely. His creative freedom lay in that space between A and B, so to speak. It is the same with modern technology. Nowadays, it is so easy to get caught up in the trap of obsessing over the next piece of equipment or software that is going to give you the necessary tool to really take your creativity to the next level. We all know that feeling. This is an endless cycle though, as all those tech toys, and let's face it, 90% of the things we want are toys, just keep getting better and better. If you own a copy of Ableton Live Suite 9, and Ableton Push, you literally have endless possibilities for making music right here, right now, period. Instead of thinking how you can continuously add to your arsenal of tools, focus on how you can interconnect all of the various tools shipped within Ableton. Yes, there are a finite number of tools like instruments, samplers, loops, and filters, but for all intents and purposes, there are infinite creative things you can do with these tools. Coming up with original ideas of how to use and combine these tools from scratch could be a real challenge if it wasn't for the internet, which leads me to idea number 9. Observe the greats. In terms of observing the greats, we definitely live in a new golden age. You can practically type in the name of any musician, producer, engineer, or other type of creative into the internet and watch or listen to them do what they do for hours on end. The access you have to this material this very second for free was reserved for the rich elites just a couple of decades ago, if even available at all. Find videos of people who really inspire you and watch them over and over again. By doing so, you will literally be engraving their energy onto your own neural circuits in your brain. And almost by osmosis, you will notice how your skill level starts to improve. I have done this for years and continue to do so even now. People I highly recommend on YouTube include artists like Mad Zach, Ski Oakenfull, Houston Singletary, Jonathan Stein, Tom Cosm, Sadowik, Deadmau5, and the list just goes on and on and on. These people have spent years or even decades refining their skills and workflow, and by actively engraving their energy patterns onto your brain, you reap the benefits of all of this hard work. Watching these artists who have spent so much time and energy refining their skills and finding their own voice will help you do the same thing, which brings me to my final idea. Be you. Steve Jobs once said that his new Apple computer should be seen as a bicycle in that it is designed to take the energy you put into it and amplify it. That is exactly how you should see Ableton Live and Push, as amplifiers of your ideas and creativity. Which brings me back to the original question. What are we all trying to get to the next level of? I would say the ultimate goal is to get better at tapping into our personal source of creativity and getting it out into the world in its purest form. And if you have been trying to do this for any length of time, you will know there are definitely many levels to doing this. And I hope that this video has been of use to you in this pursuit. Ultimately, Ableton Live and Push are some of the best tools on the planet right now to help you express yourself. That energy from deep within that makes you uniquely you. Not any different from what your ancestors were trying to do hundreds of thousands of years ago. So, last but definitely not least, make sure you are always working towards being you. Put in the work and the rest will take care of itself. And that's it. Thanks for taking the time to watch this. Make sure to not only like and subscribe, but please leave me a comment. I get excited every time. And like I said before, make sure to study the greats, put in the hard work to really learn and refine your skills, both hard and soft. Be grateful for companies like Ableton and their teams for providing you with this mind-blowing technology, and make sure to practice deeply. If you do all of this from a humble place within, you're bound to not only find your true voice, but also have the ability to fully express it. Now go get 'em.